Ladies and gentlemen, MrCropper here. I have a brief message for anybody who has a website or a business. You can increase your potential customers by 1.5 billion by translating your content into Chinese. You can contact Chris at wiptranslation.com. WIP translation, you can pronounce that. I'll put some information in the sidebar if you're interested. Let's talk about ESP, extrasensory perception, or what's it called, brainwave talking back and forth, long-distance telepathic communication. Let's talk about these things for a minute. Now, a lot of people I talk to, the standard argument for atheists is that's just coincidence. So you're sitting there one day and you have this really, really strong feeling about your cousin that you haven't talked to for 6, 8 years, and you haven't seen him for 20 years. And you're sitting there and you just start thinking about him, thinking about him, thinking about him, thinking about him. And the next day he calls you and he says, you know, I got to thinking about you yesterday. And I thought I haven't talked to him for so long. Right. And he calls you. And so, some people say that's just purely coincidence. Let's give it one more example. What about, this is a true story. True if you believe the first-hand testimony of the person involved, who's an atheist, is lying awake one night, thinks he's going to go to bed and go to sleep, can't, tossing, turning, his heart's just pounding, gets up, walks around his apartment. By and by, he finally goes to bed, doesn't ever get to sleep, phone rings, and his friend needs him to come pick him up at the hospital because he's just been in a terrible fight and had his head split open and he's got staples in his head. Is this evidence for God? That's the question I want to put here. Now, like I said, atheists usually say that's just pure coincidence. You can never substantiate it beyond being coincidental. But for people who experience it, it's more than coincidence. For them it feels really real. And I don't think that we have to leave it down to coincidence. I think that it could be real. And someday, if it is real, then it will be investigated, known, and understood scientifically. But here's the real clincher. Here's the real point about this argument. Say it is real. Say that those brainwaves and the communication and calling your cousin the next day and all that stuff, say that's real. Does that then mean that there is a God? You got one person here and one person over there, and they're communicating somehow. This does not necessitate anything in between, does it? There doesn't need to be anything in the middle there. Why does there have to be anything in the middle? Why is that an argument that gets included when we say human beings can twins, when one twin dies, the other one knows it, thousands of miles apart, weird stuff like that. Why does that bring in anything except for a mode of communication between the twins? Why? I can say something, hello, and somebody 100 yards away can hear me, and therefore there is a God. What the hell are you talking about? Why? Why does there have to be a God? Why does there have to be supernaturalism? Why can't this just be a fact of nature? And a fact that we may not understand very well, but someday might come to. But nonetheless, why does it have to bring in a supernatural argument? Now, I was talking to a woman who agreed with me up to that point, and she says, see, that's evidence for the soul. And I said, no, it's not. Why is it evidence for the soul? And she says, well, I believe in the soul. And if that's all you can do, then that's all you can do. Is just say, I'm going to use it as evidence for the soul because I believe in the soul and I can't explain ESP, therefore ESP means that there is a God and the soul and supernatural. All kinds of stuff. That's a profoundly unscientific way of thinking. To bring in all kinds of assumptions with one single fact, that entities are able to communicate under circumstances we don't presently understand. Or may be able to communicate. This isn't demonstrated. It's all first-person hearsay. So, why do we have to bring in the supernatural? That's my question. ESP and so on. Sorry to burst your bubble, guys. Those of you who have had these really profound feelings, feeling that your dad's in the room talking to you even though he died 5 years before, really, really profound feelings like that, I'm sorry to tell you that it doesn't necessarily mean there's a God or an afterworld or a supernatural realm. It doesn't. It simply means there's something that we haven't explained, and you don't get to bring in God and religion and the Bible and stuff, or even just ESP and energy balancing and shit. You can't even bring that stuff in on it. It won't bear the traffic. Communication between two entities does not necessitate a third, nondescript, non-definable entity. That's ridiculous.